Easy Audio, Lesson 1, Fundamentals of Live Audio. So in this lesson, we'll go through what equipment you will need for live sound, the basic signal flow of a stereo PA system, feedback, how it happens and how you get rid of it, and finally, speaker placement. Let's start by going through all the equipment you'll need to do a live show. So I'm going to talk about microphones that you'll need, mic stands, talk about speakers, talk about DI boxes, talk about mixers, and cables, because you need lots of cables. Let's start with microphones. For live sound, you'll need a good assortment of mics. So vocal mics, instrument mics, drum mics. So for vocal mics, the popular ones out there are the Shure SM58 and Sennheiser 845. For instruments, the most popular mics around are the SM57, Sennheiser 609, or the Sennheiser 906. So for drums, there are several drum mic packs from popular manufacturers such as Shure, Sennheiser, SE Electronics, and Behringer. So again, all of these I'll go into more detail in the next lesson. Mic stands. Along with microphones, you'll need as many stands as you have mics, plus a few extra, just in case. Having tall boom stands as well as short boom stands, straight stands, and microphone clips. Clips are mainly used for drums, as stands take up a lot of space. Sometimes you just don't have the room, so clips are perfect. Straight stands are really great for your vocalist. Tall boom stands are great for vocalists, especially if they're playing an instrument. Short boom stands are great for kick drums or amplifiers. Speakers. As far as speakers go, there are really two types, passive or powered. Passive speakers require an amplifier. Usually these amps have two channels to run two speakers, such as front of house. Now it's worth noting that you need an amp for every stage monitor that you are using. This can be handy, as you'll be able to adjust the volume from the amps without having to go on stage. So for example, if your amps are near your console or the side of the stage, you can turn them up without having to actually go on stage and interrupt the performance. Powered speakers each have an inbuilt amplifier with volume and tonal controls. This means that you will carry around less gear, and powered speakers are generally a little bit cheaper than amplifiers. DI boxes. DI stands for direct input. DI boxes are used to convert an instrument signal into a microphone signal that can then be plugged into a mixer. More about this in an upcoming lesson focusing on DI boxes. But simply put, if you want to connect a guitar, bass, or keys to a mixer, you'll need to plug into a DI box first. Mixers. Simply put, a mixer is a device that takes in multiple streams of audio, applies some processing, and then outputs to speakers. So there are analog mixers as well as digital mixers. These need their own lesson and will be covered later on. Cables. You will need lots of cables. Main cables we use for live sound are XLR cables. These have two 3-pin connectors, male side and a female side. Alright, let's go through the basic signal flow of a PA system. So it starts with your microphone. Your microphone will then connect into a stage box, which will run through what we call the multi-core. As the multi-core plugs into your mixer, to all of your inputs here. In an ideal situation, you'll output from the desk into a graphic EQ, a graphic equalizer. The graphic equalizer plugs into a compressor, and then the compressor routes to the front of house speakers. This is an ideal situation because this will cover your feedback issues, as we'll talk about in a minute, and it will also clean up your sound. Most of the situations you'll be in is you'll be microphone to stage box, through multi-core to the mixer, and outputting from the mixer directly to your speakers. Right, let's get into feedback. How it happens, how to get the fuck rid of it. So feedback is that high-pitched squeal that you will usually hear when somebody holds a microphone close to a speaker. So feedback happens by the microphone picking up sound, passing it through to the speaker. The speaker plays back that audio as it should, but the microphone picks up that audio and then it gets routed straight back through to the speaker again. And this continues very quickly, and it just creates an entire loop and this is what gives you the feedback. As sound actually travels through the air at 344 meters per second, the signal from the microphone to the mixer is all electricity, so this flows at the speed of light. This is how feedback occurs instantly because it moves so fast. Let's have a look at how we can mitigate feedback. The first step is we can reduce gain on the microphone. So this will reduce the sensitivity of the microphone, and thus the microphone will pick up less of the ambient sound in the room. Use a channel EQ or a graphic EQ. So the channel EQ is these three knobs here on this particular console. So this controls your high frequencies, mids, and your low frequencies. So if you're getting high pitch squeal, you can turn down the top knob. Not too much because you will severely cripple how the vocal sounds, but just a little bit to get rid of that feedback. Same goes for the mid-range frequencies as well as the low frequencies. Or using a graphic equalizer, there are 31 bands of frequencies that you can adjust on a graphic EQ. So this gives you a much wider range of frequencies that you can tweak to get rid of feedback. So you can hone in on a specific frequency such as 1 kilohertz, and you can notch that out and get rid of the feedback. The third option is to adjust your speaker placement. So where speakers are placed can make a really big difference. Here we have a typical setup. In some venues, some bars, some clubs, they'll have the front of house speakers, represented here, will be actually behind the microphones. This is not ideal, and you will get lots of feedback, because the sound from the speakers will be picked up by the microphones, and then that would feed through the mixer and then back to the front of house PA system, back into the microphone, and so on and so forth. So when it comes to speaker placement, the best thing is to move the front of house to in front of the stage. So this way the speakers will be firing out towards the crowd, and the microphones will not be affected by the front of house. Perfect. Although we may have issues with the guitar amps being picked up by the microphones. So in that case, move the amps to the side, out of the way of the microphones. Easy. One feedback problem I had was an acoustic guitar, an electric acoustic guitar. So the player would sit in a position directly in front of the fallback. So whenever he would play, the sound would come through the fallback, and it would enter the sound hole of the guitar, picked up by the pickup, pass through the fallback, and then straight into the guitar again, and that caused the feedback loop. So the only way to mitigate this without crippling the sound was to just angle the speaker. So therefore, when the sound came out of the foldback speaker, it was not entering the guitar. Alright, I think that'll do it for the fundamentals of live audio. So in the next lesson, I'll be talking about microphones. I'll go very in depth into how they actually work, what they do, and where you should be using them. I hope it's been informative for you. Thank you for listening.